Hi, welcome to Jefferson County Hospital's program on stress management. My name is Denise Gallagher, and we're here in the conference room at the hospital. And I'm going to be spending the next hour or so talking about what stress is and how to relieve stress and how to make stress work for you. So, as I said, my name is Denise Gallagher. I'm now the occupational therapist working in rehab here. Prior to that, I worked both in rehab and on the psychiatric unit. I split my time between both of them. And because of that, I had a lot of input on the psychiatric unit in running the stress management groups. So I did it here. I also worked at other hospitals doing stress management. I still have a particular interest in stress management because I frequently see people who will have muscle strains, muscle pulls, muscle aches. They'll have injuries or accidents, partly because of the factor of stress. That's something that I think that we're now all familiar with, is that stress does play a part in our health. How we manage stress, what we do with stress. So what I'd like to do this evening is to actually have this be an interactive experience. I've been studying and reading about stress for probably the last 27 years. I started running stress management groups when I was a child. No, I started running them when I was 19. I worked in an inpatient psychiatric unit in a private psychiatric hospital. And I love doing these kind of things. And so that's how I got to know so much about this. But I don't have all the answers either. And I'd like to hear your input and have this be a dialogue between us. You'll see that you've got a folder there. And on the left side is a kind of an overview of what we're going to do tonight. And then the second page, we may be flipping between the front, the second, and the first page. And your last page should be one of notes, a blank sheet of notes. I hope you all, okay. So feel free to, that's yours to take home. So go ahead and take as many notes or whatever. On the other side, you're going to see handouts that we may get to or we may not get to. So there's a bunch of stuff there for you to look at your leisure. Okay, so let's get started. How about we talk a little bit about what is commonly known as stress? I don't know if any of you had a chance to see, I had written an article in the Monday Ledger, and I just happened to have it. And it also was accompanied by this pretty wild and crazy looking ad with this woman who definitely looks stressed. In the article, though, the one thing that I found in my reading is that stress itself is just essentially a demand on the body. So it's a non-specific demand. And so this can mean all sorts of things. What are some examples of stresses? Let me hear. What could be a demand on your body, which is a little bit, out of the ordinary, let's put it that way?
Disease.
A disease certainly is a stressor, sure. Sure. Cold weather is. I know that we've been really blessed lately not to have to worry too much about freezing cold, but cold weather is.
Telephone calls asking for money.
Yes, yes, indeed.
It's time of year for that.
Yeah, I just got one earlier today. Yes, indeed. How about vacations? Have you ever thought of a vacation as a stress? Getting ready for them? It's something just that requires you to do some things a little bit differently. What I often think of as stress is a change of some sort. And that change can be actually something you want. I mean, I love actually doing these kind of talks. But I have to be honest that I was feeling a little stressed about doing stress management in front of the TV. And I've given this talk probably over 100 times. And I've talked to different groups. And I think some of you have probably seen me do this kind of talk before. But so there were certain things that I did to manage the stress. And so that's what I want to share with you. And I'm sure that you all have things that you do also. But what you'll see first here is eustress versus distress. I think that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that stress is a part of life. Change is a part of life. You know, the rise and fall of the gasoline prices, all the things that we're going through with worrying about our mail. I mean, there's a lot of things in life that, you know, just bombard us, and that's part of life. Taking on a new job. You may want a new job, but then there you have a stress. You know, what's it going to be like? Am I going to like these people? Am I going to feel adequate? Getting married. I know some people have gone through that here in the past year or two. It's something exciting, but then there's a lot to get used to. So change in itself, I would say, is a stress. So what I found was that what we frequently think of as stress is usually too much stress, okay? There is something that, I read an interesting quote. It said that people can suffer from burnout, which is what we think of as too much stress, but they can also suffer from rust out, which is not enough. Boredom in itself can be a stressor. And I think that one thing that people will often say is that after they retire, that can be a stress, not having a regular routine, not going to a job, and you're nodding your head. So maybe not having that constant stimulation or getting out there and doing things can in itself be a stressor. So there is an optimal level of stress. And this is what we would call eustress. Eustress meaning like euphoria, positive, you know, all those things that we really want in life, even though they're difficult. And so that could be where we have the optimal amount of stress, is what we call the eustress. So that's something we want in our life. And the trick is to manage the stress that goes with it. If you have, let's see, this is a small amount of productivity, a large amount of productivity, your time, energy, and stress along here. So essentially, the way I read the graph is that right here in the middle, there is your own personal level of stress that feels comfortable. So let's talk a little bit about what the stress response is. Essentially, the stress response, you've all heard of the fight or flight response and what that means. Let's talk a little bit about what that is. How do you know when that's been triggered? What are some of the sensations you experience?
Fast heart rate.
A fast heart rate, absolutely. What else? What about somebody cuts in front of you when you're driving? What happens?
Road rage.
Road rage, right. You get out your 2x4. Uh-huh, sure. The anger comes up and it's like, that heartbeat starts quickening. Anything else? There's a whole range of responses that go with that surge of adrenaline that comes in there to deal with something that's perceived as a threat.
My shoulders get up tight.
The tensing of the muscles. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I know just what you're talking about.
High blood pressure.
Yep, that can happen. So essentially, the blood pressure rises. The hands and feet can get cold, clammy, sweaty. Tracy's, that happens to you, huh? Yeah. Okay, so these are just some of those symptoms, I call them, of having that rush of adrenaline that comes from the fight or flight response. And this is something that's built into our system. It's a survival mechanism. You've probably heard this before. It's made, we're built that way so that essentially that blood, which drains from our feet and our hands, goes to the larger muscles of our legs and our shoulders, comes in towards the center of our body so that the oxygen can nourish the heart, the brain, large muscles. So we're built to survive that way. unfortunately, the kind of stresses that we encounter every day are usually not life-threatening. It can be something like, what? Not getting along with your boss at work. Not necessarily life-threatening, but your blood pressure may go up, your heart starts racing, you're like, you know, it's just, I guess I often think of these things that we'll consider distress or too much stress as situations that we perceive as a threat. Does that make sense? You perceive it as a threat. Now, you mentioned earlier disease, and so that feels like a personal threat. There's a life or death kind of feeling about it, so that definitely can cause distress.
A member of family's illness, too.
Right, a member of the family's illness, absolutely. Yeah. The one thing about stress that I've been learning, even though I've been doing this for years, as I was researching this, there were some interesting kind of facts. That essentially, that the stresses of life in and of themselves are not negative, but it's if they build up, and if you don't, when you have that surge of adrenaline and your muscles tighten up, if you have that repeatedly through the day and your muscles don't have a chance to relax again, your system doesn't have a chance to come back to balance or calm, peacefulness, then you can have an overactive fight or flight response or an overactive system where your body will constantly be feeling under stress. And I think that that's when it gets to the place where we would call it distress or too much stress, is when you're not able to just relax. And I think that, unfortunately, that's kind of modern society. You know, it's just that there's so much, and I think that as life, I mean, I don't mean to get into a philosophical discussion here, but there is this idea that more is better, doing more is better, getting more accomplished, things are moving faster, you know, speedier communication. You know, there's so much more information that comes in. I've seen it in my own lifetime, just this barrage of different types of stressors that maybe we didn't have 30, 40 years ago. So the problem here is that I think that all of us need to learn how to find ways throughout the day to lower the stress level. Okay, just little ways, and that's what I want to talk about tonight, is really how to go into a stressful situation and then bring yourself back to calm so that you're not just adding and adding and adding. So, any thoughts? I see some people nodding and smiling. What were you thinking? Were you willing to share? No. Okay. All right, so does that kind of make sense? I know that I can see it in myself in certain periods of my life that there are certain muscles that just won't relax. Anybody have that? And me particularly, it's right here, right through my shoulders. And I know that the physiology of the muscle contraction is that, you know, probably it's that response that you're talking about, like, oh, the shoulders come up, and then they relax a little bit, and then they come up again, and they relax a little. But then there's never a total relaxation, and so that there is that, it's like a contraction that just remains there. And what can happen, as I've been working in rehab, I've understood a little bit more about what can cause pain in the muscles. There's actually oxygen deprivation happening there. When they stay contracted and they get knotted, you're not getting the exchange of nutrients in the cellular level. And so you have these knots that remain there. And so that's another reason it's really important to find a way to just unload your body of that stress, unload your mind of that stress. So, okay, how about we move on to what I call the 3 different types. Well, I have it written here, what causes stress, internal and external. Under internal, I would put what goes on in your own mind, and we're going to talk more specifically about that, and also what's going on in your body, what you're doing to your body, what your body's experiencing. So those are the internal stresses. The external stresses are the situational things, and that's the things going on in your environment. And we'll talk specifically about that too. How does stress affect you? We talked some already on that. Some of the signs of too much stress. Let's talk about how do you know you're under too much stress? We can break it down in terms of behavior. What are you thinking, gals? How do you know?
I eat too much.
Okay.
I start picking at stuff when I'm not hungry.
Okay. Overeating. Yeah, that's a behavior when you're just stressed out and you don't know what to do with it.
Or you're just not able to sleep.
Not able to sleep.
Internally.
Right. Your behavior definitely changes that way. Or some people will sleep too much. They'll just feel tired and just want to sleep all the time. But yeah, I'm one of those people who doesn't sleep enough when they're stressed out. Any other behaviors? There's a bunch of them.
Irritability.
Uh-huh. Irritability, absolutely. How about these people who are, you can spot them. They're tapping their foot, yeah. Okay, how about the habits? We talked a little bit about the habits. The sleep habits change, the eating habits change. Any other habits? There could be more drinking, obviously, that could be part of it. All right, how about physically? Any other symptoms that we didn't talk about? How do you know you're under too much stress physically?
On a rash.
A rash.
Is that under stress?
Often. I'm not going to say every time. I know I had hives once, and it was definitely stress related. And I've also had shingles, and I think maybe that was stress related. So, yeah. Anybody else have any other symptoms they'd be willing to share? And don't worry, your faces are not on TV. just mine.
Palpitations.
Okay, right, the palpitations. Sure, that's definitely a symptom. I have a long list here. Well, here, hives and rashes are in this list. I want to recommend this book that I recently got out of the library, The Doctor's Guide to Instant Stress Relief. That's where I got some of this information from. You can have lightheadedness or faintness, dizziness, that kind of thing. Migraine headaches, dry mouth, frequent colds or bouts of the flu. How about that one? I think that it's become more common knowledge that people realize their immune system is affected by stress. This is something now I think that we've come to understand, that when we're run down, stressed out, we're not going to be able to ward off these things as we ordinarily might. Stomach cramping. Anybody here have somebody who holds stress in their stomach? I occasionally get that. Yeah, occasionally I do. Okay, so the emotional and the mental, how about we put those together? Any other signs that you know you're under too much stress that might fall under those headings? How about difficulty concentrating? Yeah. All righty. Well, I think you probably all know in yourself. Each one of us shows it differently. I know that for me it'll be my shoulders and my jaw. Yeah, so each of you will, and as we go on, you'll see that there are, I'm going to say 3 different ways or coping responses or coping styles. There are people who carry their stress more in their body. Okay, they'll have more physical symptoms. People who carry their stress more mentally, a lot of worry, a lot of difficulty sleeping, things like that. But they may not have physical symptoms. I have a friend who doesn't know what back pain is. I was like, wow. I didn't know that people didn't have that. But, you know, he probably worries in other ways, and that's his thing. And then there's people who have a combination of both sort of mental and physical responses to stress. So essentially, let's go on to number 4. what I have found is that dealing with stress is usually not just a linear approach. It usually takes a multi-tiered or multi-pronged approach. And what I've found is that at least 3 big areas, and I think that we can kind of break them down into, the first one has to do with problem solving, and that's for those stresses that make you worry. Okay, those are the things that you stay up at night thinking about. The second area is, well, the problem solving has to do with situational stresses. The second one, the attitude, is more how you view life and how that is a stressor. Does that make sense? How your own attitudes can be a stress, can cause you stress. Okay? And the third one is what I'm going to call the coping strategies, and those deal with more of the physical aspect of how to cope with stress, how to strengthen yourself physically against the stress. Okay. First off, with the problem solving, let's see. That has to do with the stress in your surroundings. What might that be? Let's talk a little bit more about what stresses are in your surroundings. You can talk about home or outside your home. What are some examples of situational stresses that maybe we haven't touched on yet?
Well, in many occupations, the weather is a big factor.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's going to be sunshine or rainy or...
Right. Absolutely. I once encountered that. I know what you're talking about. The rain or the snow or whatever can definitely be a stress if you work outside.
Or even if you're just planning to go someplace, you
Uh-huh.
get tuned in. Well, now, what's the weather going to be like?
Right. Okay. Well, what I would suggest is that in terms of these stresses that are in your environment, I suggest that you take a look around. Starting just with your home. What you see, what you smell, where you're sitting, with everything that contacts your senses. Is there anything about that that's irritating to you? Some people may live close to the train. What do you do about that? I know when I bought the house where I live now, it was a stress at first, and I started wearing earplugs at night. But look at the stresses in your immediate environment, and then also look at the stresses around you, and just take a stock. You can write it down. I definitely recommend journaling. If not, you can just do things like this. Come to a little meeting and think to yourself, is it something I can have control over? Is it something I can have control over? Can I have some impact on that stress, or is it something I can't control? Okay, so let's talk about the things you can control. Those might be the things in your home. What I found is, and it makes perfect sense because I think we all know it, that clutter in itself can create stress. Because you're thinking about all the things you should get done by looking at that clutter. You're thinking, oh, I'm going to have to take care of this, or it's all out there, and you're thinking, oh, I got to do this, 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 this. So your mind is real oriented towards the future and what you need to do. So that sort of thing can create stress in itself. So that's an example of something you can control. What I've given you in your handout is the, Chris, can I have the white handout so I could refer to it? You'll see on the first sheet it says there, problem solving. And you can have fun with that, and you can do that for many different ones. I used to love to do this group. Yeah, this one. This is one that is fun to do with somebody else. And just take one of those stressors that you can do something about, that maybe you haven't really gone into deeply to think about that. Can anybody think of one right away that they'd like to do? I mean, I'm not going to have you do it right now. Excuse me, but Is there a stressor that you'd like to set a goal around? Because with the brainstorming, basically, you just come up with lots of different options, and then you set a goal, and then you try to set a realistic time to accomplish it. This is just something to try out. Anybody want to offer a stressor that they think they want to work with at home?
Holidays straightened out.
Get the holidays straight. You mean the decorating and the planning and the...
planning and the dinners.
Okay, all right. So, excellent. I think that a lot of times it'll all roll around in our head, and unless we actually put it in writing or sit down and organize it, it's a stressor. Because you think, oh, I don't want to forget this. I don't want to forget this.
I'm just trying to get everybody organized.
Getting it right. Okay. All right. I think everybody can relate to that right now. Just getting yourself organized is a challenge. So the other aspect, under C, I put, there are a lot of stressors, obviously, that we can't control. So what do we do about that? What do we do about those things we can't control? Those are the bad ones.
You can't control.
Yeah. Well, they do create a feeling of helplessness. Yeah. Anybody want to share what they do with those things that they can't control? I think it's a really uniquely personal challenge. I mean, we all are faced with things we can't control. But how we deal with that has very profound effects on our life. Anybody want to share?
You can't control your family's health, and that so many of them are getting older and thinking, nursing home, that type of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, that's absolutely a stressor. Yeah, and it's, we're going to talk a little bit in the second section here about attitude, and just sometimes there's nothing we can do about that, but maybe how we feel about it, if we can sort through maybe having a different attitude. But I enjoyed when I was working on the psychiatric units, I enjoyed using this book, Pieces Every Step, The Path of Mindfulness in Everyday Life. Mindfulness has become very popular in stress management, and also, well, a lot of the, there's a particular hospital out on the East Coast, I think it's associated with Harvard, I know it's around Boston, and this fellow by the name of John Kabat-Zinn has done a lot of research using mindfulness to treat illnesses, and I'm pretty sure also treating people who've had cardiac problems. Essentially, mindfulness is about bringing your attention into the present moment. Just really, and acknowledging that there are things that you can't control, but in this present moment, I'll just read just a little passage from this. He encourages people to bring their awareness into the present by just doing simple breathing. Breathing in and breathing out. And one of these exercises is, as you breathe in and out, to say to yourself, breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I smile. Dwelling in the present moment, I know this is a wonderful moment. All we really have is this moment. We don't know what's going to happen. And like you said, there's so much we can't control. In this moment, what we can control is appreciating this moment, but there's, and knowing that we're doing the best that we can with our loved ones. One of the aspects of mindfulness is also recognizing that suffering is more about resisting pain. Pain, unfortunately, emotional pain, this sadness is a part of life. But by pushing it away and avoiding it, that can be a stress. Mindfulness is about allowing yourself to experiencing it fully. In this present moment, I'm feeling that pain of sadness around my health, around the health of my loved one. And just feeling it fully, not running from it. So I'm going to leave the book over here. You're welcome to look at it and check out anything that John Kabat-Zinn has written is good. I have lent that to somebody, so I couldn't find it today, but I've given this to a number of people. I'm going to put a plug in for this. My brother's also a doctor, and he loves mindfulness. He recommends it to all his patients, and he's done a couple of courses in mindfulness. So it's out there as a very popular means of just bringing your awareness into the present moment to appreciate the present moment. So getting on to the attitude as a stressor, let's look at, for example, one thing that I had read was that anger and anxiety are actually the emotional equivalents of the fight or flight response. So that anxiety that we feel is that fight or flight response. You know, we sense, oh, we have to do something here. So essentially, you've probably all heard this, that situations in and of themselves are neutral, but it's how we interpret them that makes them stressful or difficult or negative. There's, I'm not going to write it down. I think it's a pretty basic concept, and that's where the whole field of cognitive therapy came from, was looking at how our attitudes have impacted on us by how we interpret something in our environment. So how I'm going to interpret something is going to be different than how you interpret it. And so how I look at it may give me a lot of stress. So you're going to see in the handouts, I included, oh boy, there's material I haven't covered. I've included this one, challenging your irrational beliefs. Okay. What I didn't mention to you is the 50 ways to reduce stress, which is nice, and the basic human rights. This is something in terms of your situation. You may need to use assertiveness, so that's there. Challenging your rational beliefs. That's all about taking stock of how you look at things. Frequently, we are prone, all of us are prone to think about what we should do, what we have to do, what we're owed, what we deserve, these sort of things, which can definitely lead to a lot of pressure. So go ahead and you can scan down that left side, all the irrational ideas. I have plenty of them, if not all of them. Any one of these jump out at you as something that maybe you can relate with? Yes? I hear some chuckling over there. Okay. How about, go ahead.
Denise, like I was reading number 6 here.
Uh-huh.
I think after September 11th, I think that's what a lot of people
Okay.
continue to
Number 6, if,
irrational,
yeah, if something is potentially dangerous or fearsome, I must keep dwelling on it. Okay. Yeah, I can relate to that. But I think that the one thing is continuing to dwell on it. Is there anything that we can do about that? But it's a natural tendency to dwell on it. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, unfortunately, that the worrying, which we often do, which can take up 80% of what our mind is occupied with, is frequently around these things we can't control. I think the mind will think if we keep worrying, then somehow we can be ready in case it happens. If we keep worrying, we're sort of keyed up. We can protect ourselves, and I don't know. Is there anything that we can really do in our daily lives besides, to protect ourselves? I don't think. I know that there are people in the urban areas who may be avoiding big shopping malls or what. Maybe they're checking their mail, and I know some people locally are checking their mail. So, if that makes you feel more comfortable, then that's... But what's written here, to counter that, worrying changes nothing aside from taking responsible precautions. Life must go on. So I would say that probably the point here is that once you take the precautions, that in terms of reducing your stress, there just needs to be a place where you let it go once you've taken the precautions. It's...
Walking and exercise helps a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah, well I want to spend a lot of time talking about just those kind of things, but yeah, to help reduce some of that stress. Okay, there are different things. An interesting quote that I read was that just like there's junk food for the body, there is junk food for the mind. Some of these negative ideas, negative thoughts that we can get into basically are not healthy for us. And so that there are healthy thoughts, productive thoughts, that it's like having health food. And this particular book, which again I recommend, and I did get it from the library here, there's like 3 pages of inspirational quotes. So that sort of thing is good for calming the mind. Is there a quote that you'd like to share which helps you calm your mind? Anybody have one they particularly like? When they feel a little overwhelmed, that helps them get through it?
Is the Serenity Prayer.
The Serenity Prayer, yeah. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Sure. Okay. And lastly, I'm just going to go down to this one under coping strategies. So there's a bunch of coping strategies. Most of these are for dealing with the physical stress. So how about we go to the second page, because I've outlined coping strategies in 3 big areas here. Coping strategies, and it's 10 of H. All right, we can get through this. Under situational, these are the stresses that are in your environment. I have used the problem-solving process, okay. Remove or reduce the stressful noise, odors, objects, or lighting. Reduce clutter. Ask assertively for what you need. And that's why I put in there the basic human rights, in case any of you have not seen that, which it's good material. It's basically about asking for what you need and knowing that that's okay to be assertive. The next one is saying no to stressful requests. Managing your time to get enough relaxation, recreation, and sleep. That's not an easy one to do around the holidays, is it? But in terms of managing your stress, it's important that you have that balance of how you use your time. Listen actively to improve the communication with people around you. Reach out to meet and to get close with others, and make a to-do list and prioritize. These are just a few ideas. If you walk away with just one new idea tonight, then I'm happy. Any thoughts about these? This is just, like I said, there's lots of literature out there, and there's magazine articles almost every month you can see written about how to reduce stress, especially around the holidays. So.
Well, speaking of stressful noise and so forth, for instance, barking dogs bother me quite badly. And when we moved into our neighborhood, not anyone had a dog then. Now there are 3 dogs just right around us, and they talk to each other an awful lot.
Well, they talk to each other. It's a nice way of putting it. Oh dear. Well, Any suggestions as to how to deal with the dogs? Chris, you're in the area of politics. Talk to Chris's, her dad, or maybe she could give you a little help. No. Is it possible to report barking dogs? Yeah. I know somebody who did call the police. Okay, so have you had an experience with doing that?
There's a police scanner at home and they always get the barking dog problems on the way.
Go quiet that dog down. Put a muzzle on it. Oh.
Well, it's trying to figure out which one to switch.
Well, have you tried the earplugs?
No, but we have one that barks really early in the morning.
Oh.
And then the others, some of them bark if you just go outside the door, something is different in the
Oh.
environment. And the other one,
Right, they're stressed out.
well, they are.
Sure. Right, they're creating stress for everybody else. I can sympathize. I have dogs in my neighborhood too, so. Second one here, these are approaches to help with those stresses that are mostly in your mind, and I'll just read through them. The first one is to catch yourself jumping to conclusions, taking things personally, or making mountains out of molehills. And that means just be aware of it. That's tricky. I know it's tricky because we're often running our mind as somebody else can see we're making mountains out of molehills, and we're like, what do you mean? I have every right to be upset. Okay. Well, take some time and actually step back, and we'll talk about how to do that too. Ask yourself, will it really matter 5 years from now? I like that when I came across that. I thought, that's a good one. What's that?
I say that to myself lots of times.
Do you? I like that, yeah. One thing, and it's not written here, that I found a lot, and obviously working on the psychiatric unit, I saw people who were very stressed out. One of the biggest stresses is that most of these people felt that they had to be perfect. They had to do it right all the time in order to feel love. But I think it's also our educational system kind of pushes us all to feel like we got to achieve, we got to get A's, we got to, it's just, that's kind of how our Western culture is. If you succeed, you do well, then you're well-liked, you're popular, your parents, love you, et cetera, and sometimes we can carry that on and feel like our house has to be perfect. We have to have the decorations up just in time and just drive ourselves,
Well, we feel like we're responsible, I think, maybe for more than we ought to be.
Exactly. We're responsible. And frequently we'll take too much responsibility, and boy, is that a stress. Yeah, absolutely. Challenge your unreasonable shoulds, oughts, musts, owes, and deserves. Avoid exaggerated self-labeling such as stupid, lazy, dumb, crazy, ugly. Use thought stopping to mentally yell stop, seeing a red light or hearing a whistle. What that's about is if you catch yourself with these kind of self-defeating ideas, one suggestion is to actually see a stop sign. Stop. To try to derail yourself from continuing. Because sometimes it can go on and you're like, you end up getting so anxious or whatever when you realize that it's just your own mind is leading you down that road. You can use images of your fondest memories and proudest moments, so you take mini vacations throughout the day and overcome self-defeating emotions. If you find yourself really going round and round with something that's bugging you, distract yourself with some engaging game or activity. Find health-enhancing phrases and repeat them regularly. Laugh at yourself and the situation comedies around you, and there's plenty of them. Use instant pre-plays. What do I need to do? That's basically, rather than worrying about something you have to do, just think, what do I need to do? Not about all the things that could go wrong. Use instant replays to identify new areas where you might need to apply stress relief techniques. So looking back and saying, oh, I could have done it better, isn't real helpful. But maybe if there's ways that you could have relaxed even more. I think when we enjoy ourselves and relax, I think things usually go better. So I know when I was preparing for this, I thought I could sit and think about all the things, and then I thought, no, I'm just going to focus on what I need to present and just let go. Okay, the last section. This is where I want to be really specific in showing you some different things to help reduce the stress in your body physically. It's a special interest of mine because I definitely hold stress in my body, so it's something that I've worked with a lot myself. You're going to see a bunch of recommendations here, and I want to do some of these. We started around 10 after 7. Are you folks okay staying till 10 after 8? I hope. Okay.
I may have to leave a little sooner, but everybody else can stay.
Oh dear. Okay. Number 1 here. You've probably all seen it. What is the number 1 way to reduce stress?
Exercise.
Exercise. And why is that? It's not that people just want to see you miserable exercising. Exercise basically gets rid of the, where did I read it? Exercise burns off the biochemical byproducts of stress, and it is one of nature's best tranquilizers. I actually exercised over lunch, so I could get rid of some of the stress of doing this. What? You guys are laughing. I know. Pretty funny. But the one thing that I thought was interesting is that research has shown if you start small by walking, if you want to do an exercise program, don't start out by jogging, walk. If you start slowly and you walk, after a year you'll probably still be doing some sort of exercise, walking or whatever. If you try to do too much all at once, you're going to burn out and not do it. Start slow, increase with small increments. The second one here says progressive relaxation, and that is something we're going to do together where you squeeze and relax, and then we're going to focus on making your body feel heavy. Autogenic training is very similar, where you feel your body parts becoming warm and heavy and relaxed. Okay, next one, deep belly breathing. One thing that probably you notice is when you're under stress that you breathe up here. Does anybody notice that? I notice it about myself, that I don't breathe deeply. It'll all be up here. So the one thing that frequently has been said around breathing is that babies have that relaxed belly breathing. It's not up here. And so we want to aim several times in an hour to just take a moment to do some deep belly breathing. And we're going to have you do that in just a few moments. Next one, find a relaxed part of your body and allow it to spread through your body. That means there's usually a part of you that's relaxed, and see if you can imagine it actually spreading to the rest of your body. Okay, feel yourself supported in your chair, bed, or floor. How about we do that right now? It's okay, you can keep filming. Alrighty, this is important, I think. Okay, this is probably the quickest and easiest stress relaxation thing you can do. I can't get my feet on the ground, but if you can get your feet on the ground, you can't either. Okay, here we go. I want you to notice if you can feel how your body is supported by the chair and your feet are supported by the floor. Okay, essentially you feel the weight of your body. Notice how your body is received by the chair and by the floor. Notice how your back is resting against the back of the chair. Did you feel a little shift in your muscle tension as you did that? I love it. She nods a lot. I'm a nodder too. Yes. This is like a 5-second stress reliever, And I think that for me, if I'm going through the day and I'm active, and if I just go, okay, I feel my weight supported on the chair, I realize that I'm holding my muscles up. I'm like, I gotta go, I gotta do something,
Hold your breath.
Yeah, it's like this kind of, and we don't even realize it. So part of dealing with stress is knowing when you are carrying tension, knowing when you're carrying that kind of, I don't think we think of it as fear, but there's a subtle fear there. I'm not doing enough, I'm not getting things done, I'm not, whatever. And just go, okay, right now, I'm doing what I need to do, and I can do it more effectively if I'm relaxed. I don't have to tense up all these muscles to do something. I can relax my muscles. Simple and easy, just by feeling how you're supported. Did everybody feel that shift? Okay. Go ahead and just play with it a little bit. And it's good for insomnia. For those of you who have insomnia, feel your body supported in bed. Just notice, can I feel the weight of my body? All right, that's just a simple one. Next, it says here, use external cues to relax. For example, a red light or the phone ringing. That's another one that comes from this mindfulness. Essentially, all through the day, you can use different things as a cue to go, okay, I can relax. You're waiting for the red light to turn. Feel your body supported in the car, by the chair in the car, the seat. The other one, just with the phone ringing, rather than quickly getting it, okay, I can relax before you pick it up. Okay, for your body, take the stairs. It's just extra exercise. You know, I've also seen you can park your car way, half a block away and then walk. Anytime you can, just to find a little bit of exercise throughout the day is always useful. Quieting response. Essentially what that is, and these are, like I said, these are quickies here. That's smiling inwardly, take a deep breath. Say to yourself, alert, amused mind, calm body. That comes from the mindfulness literature too, where you just, in this present moment, bring your attention to your breath and being amused and calm in your body. Take a hot bath or go to the jacuzzi. I did that last night. Get a massage. Got a massage yesterday. You can tell I'm into this stuff. Or give yourself a head, neck, shoulder, or foot rub. Anybody ever done that? Yes, okay. All right, I want to go through and do some of these. How about right now? I'll just show you. They say for the back, the neck muscles, you can just squeeze those trapezius muscles with the palms of your hands. Just like this. You've done that one. Okay, that's a good one for the neck. There's lots of good ones. I think we just experiment with what feels good. You can do facial massages all through here, scalp massages. All these are relaxing. They're all good things to do to reduce your stress level. Foot rubs. I have a boyfriend who loves to get foot rubs, and he's great at giving them, so it's a good thing. Stretch tight muscles. There's lots of literature out there. You can just do stretching. I know with the cardiac support group that a lot of people have learned how to do the stretches. One that I really like, I don't know if you've gone through, is this one, where you just hold on to your chair and you can stretch this muscle, which is a real bugaboo muscle for a lot of people. And this one. A little tight, huh? Okay, stretch these muscles. They're also isometrics. Okay, it's good to do the full range of motion here. I don't think I'm going to go too much into that because that's something you'd probably want to check with your doctor if you should do. Stretching is always good, though, to the place of comfort. Okay, we don't want you hurting yourself. And lastly, I have here, eat breakfast. Keeping a balanced diet. It's so simple. I mean, we've heard it since we were babies, but it's real important for just the physical ability to react to stress, is to feel there's constant, there's nourishment, there's fuel, there's, I know I'm guilty of skipping breakfast, and I'm trying to get myself back on a better schedule with that. Avoid caffeine, nicotine, salt, and sugars, all those fun things. I see somebody over there wincing. Essentially, the idea is not to go overboard. I think a little bit of caffeine I've read, is not a terrible thing, 1 cup in the morning. Salt apparently, I can't remember the whole biochemical mechanism behind it, but there's something about having too much salt that really, it reproduces, basically your body feels like it's having stress by having salt, right? I mean, there's something, it is stressful to have too much salt in the system. And sugar gives that artificial adrenaline rush, and so you can feel more fatigued, more wiped out afterwards. So, we've got 10 after. Let's do, okay, at this point, we're going to be doing a progressive relaxation, and I just want to say goodbye to the people who are tuning in at home. And thank you for joining us for our talk on stress management. If you want more information, you can contact me at the hospital. My name again is Denise Gallagher. The number here is 469-4140. And take it easy. Thank you.